I start out with a background like this. I have a lot of nice paint strokes, a lot of nice brush strokes in here. And all this is a color pencil stick that's turned into a solvent. So this is really kind of like my starting point here. And then what I do is I go back in with a little tiny eraser. I go back in with this little tiny eraser. It's made by Tombow. And I'll go back in and I'll start pulling out the background and pulling out all the highlights and the midtones with just this little eraser. Wow. So I may spend a good couple months just very slowly pulling the pigment away from off the film to get my different tones. To the point where I'll get something as sketchy as this. And a lot of times I call this my ugly phase, where it gets to a point where it's like, oh gosh, this is ugly. Am I gonna go on with this? And I'm sure as artists you've worked on pieces before and thought, what did I get myself into? And this is the point where on my piece I get into this point where it's like my ugly phase. So I start going in and I start pulling all the highlights and the midtones until I get an image that looks like my reference photo. So I'll pull out all this background. I'll pull out the background behind the head with just this little eraser. And then if I want to pull out some bigger areas, I'll pull it out with the kneaded eraser. And I can soften up the skin, pull out the background, and then in this case here, the stripes on his shirt, I can pull the stripes off. And I came up with this process because I was doing my work in color, and I just felt like my work lacked emotion. I had a lot of color in my work, but it was just a very nice color portrait, and it wasn't a portrait that I felt like I could stop and look and really take in. And I really didn't feel like I had a connection with my subjects also. And I just didn't want to be a portrait artist. I want to be a portrait artist where people connect with my work. I wanted to show the frailty of the human spirit in a lot of my work too. So I decided what I would do is cut down on my palette. And the best way to get emotion invoked into your artwork is cut your palette down. So I cut my palette down to black and white, and started working solely with black and white. And I was working with black and white. I knew that what I had to do is come up with something that really inspired people, something that would really catch people's eyes. So I realized with black and white, I had to have a lot of texture. I had to have a lot of contrast in my images to get them to really pop. So what I would do is I would come up with my subject. I would go out and buy the clothing for my subject, and I'd make sure that there's a lot of prints in it, a lot of pattern, a lot of texture in the outfits, and a lot of contrast in the outfits too, to really show what black and white can do as it's stripped down. A lot of my portraits they're not conventional portraits. A lot of times with my subjects, I just let them kind of do what they want. And I'll take like maybe 200, 300 pictures of my subjects in the studio, and then I'll go back in with the 300 pictures and start working in Photoshop to clean them up until I get a nice reference photo, and then I start my drawing. And most of these drawings take about 2 to 3 months, this size here. I have larger drawings that are like 42 by 36, or I have one drawing that's 5 feet high. That took about almost a year to do.
You use the eraser to get that?
But it's a really long process that I have to go through to start pulling out all the different layers of pigment just to get to the tone that I would like. And then I go back in and I start reevaluating my tones. I can add more color pencil on here if I like. I can take out more if I like. But after I started working on this, my career as a professional fine artist really started shooting. And I realized that I had to get my name out there, I had to get my work out there. So what I do is I do all my own marketing. As a professional artist, you get to learn how to market yourself. So if you go on social media, you go on Instagram, Facebook, there's a lot of sites on there that you publicize your work. A lot of the people that follow my work like to follow works in progress to see what I'm working on now, and see the progress as a piece as it goes through a number of months. So a good thing to do is take your work in progress and post it on your website or your Facebook page or your social media page. And it really kind of inspires people and gets people really interested in your work to the point where they want to see what their next piece is. I want to see what his next piece is before everybody else does. Another thing what I also do is I teach drawing classes, color pencil classes at Mill Street Art Center. So that's another way as an artist that you can add to your income as a professional artist is teach a class. I also teach workshops around the country, and I teach actually this workshop with my drawing by subtraction. I teach that around the country too, to different art groups, different art leagues, different color pencil groups that want to know this technique. And when I teach this technique to people, I'm not trying to get them to change the way they work and to adapt my technique. I want them to think differently. I want to have them think backwards. In this case here, you're not applying the pigment, you're actually taking it away. So your mind is thinking a little bit differently. And you have to do a lot of concentrating while you're doing this because you're actually kind of working backwards. But as you're working this way, you end up not thinking about lines. You start thinking about more like tones and color and how the tones blend in and create other tones instead of, is this line correct, or is this line too heavy, or now I've got a bunch of lines I've got to soften up. So besides the workshops, I do seminars. I do a lot of exhibitions too. A lot of exhibitions you can find online or in Cafe. And Cafe is a site that they will post exhibitions all over the country that you can enter. They cost me about $35 to enter, and you enter 2 or 3 pieces. But a lot of the shows I enter, you could win, money. You could win $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 for, for being placing into an exhibition. I also show exhibitions. I actually show here at Bridgeport Art Center on the 4th floor a few times a year. Besides the show that the Color Pencil Society had in the summer, I showed. But an artist, you really kind of have to be your own marketing person. So you're always out there promoting yourself. And as work, I don't consider this artwork. I consider this my brand. And it comes from the graphic design. Gatorade, Kellogg's, Quaker, their brand. I kind of learned that this is my brand. So your brand, you pretty much have to take care of it yourself. If nobody else is going to take care of it for you. You have to nurture it. You have to babysit it all the time because nobody else will babysit it for you. And what I end up doing is every step that I take with my work, I always think in the back of my mind, is this good for my brand? Is this a good show to enter for my brand? Or is it a show that I'm not going to get that much publicity out of? It's not a show that's going to do anything for my career, so maybe I'll just kind of pull out and wait for something else. Another thing too is also in publications. As a fine artist, you love to get your stuff in publications, no matter how big or small it is, because it gets out to a bigger, huge audience. I was lucky enough the past couple months to be in Artist Magazine, Artist International. They did a piece on me because I won second place in the color pencil show, and then I'm also going to do another article on my technique with the color pencil on the drafting show. So the color pencil artists, you have exhibitions, you have workshops, you have teaching. You can teach a class or even just a one-on-one class. I have some clients that are they're just one person that I teach a color pencil class to. So a lot of private lessons I'll work on during the week. At the same time during the week, besides working on my artwork, I'll work on artwork that I'm getting ready to present to in the classroom. So as a professional artist, you really have to kind of be your own monitor for your brand. And I also like to follow other artists out there too and see what else is going on out there. As a color pencil artist, I have a lot of color pencil friends out there that I follow. But the people that I really follow strong and very close are painters and photographers for different reasons. Usually photographers because I shoot my own subject matter. I always want to learn the best way to shoot a subject, the best way to put that subject in the light, an unusual, different way to pose the subject that's really more interesting. A lot of shows that I go to, I will see a portrait, and if it's very nicely done portrait, but there's nothing kind of different about this picture. I tell people who do wildlife animals, if you're going to draw a tiger or a lion in the wild, make this the most interesting tiger in the wild that you can come up with because it's all been done before. So you might be a different view of the lion, a different pose of the lion, something very unusual. That's what's going to get people's attention. That's what's going to get you noticed. That's what the judge is going to notice. So you always want to do something a little bit different. So I try to tell people, even with portraits, I try to stay away from portraits that are very conventional and try to do something a little bit different. Is there any questions so far?
You said you use color pencils.
Yes.
Do you also use watercolor pencils?
Yes, I can use watercolor pencil, but in this process I just use color pencil. And I use a color pencil stick and I turn into a solvent to make that background, to create this. So I turn the color pencil stick into a liquid.
You mentioned you use an eraser to build up now that picture there?
Yes.
Use an eraser?
Yes. This drawing here at one time looked just like this. And then I went back in and started pulling out all my hottest highlights first, and then putting all my darkest areas. So I had later on I can add back in the color pencil to the detail. Oh yeah, I've done it before with colors. Yeah, it's really interesting and really fun to do. I'll show it to you someday. Come back and show it to you. Yes.
Excuse me, did you say that you entered an exhibit for $35 and you could put in so many pieces?
Usually about 3 pieces. Yeah, about $35 you'd enter for about 3 pieces into a competition.
I know that.
And then when you enter it, usually you need to save it as a JPEG. And they usually have certain criteria of a JPEG, how to save it, because they'll put it on a website to view it. And a lot of times it shows that your answer will actually say how to save your work. So you'll need to be able to shoot your work and then save it as a JPEG at a certain size to be able to submit it.
Oh, to the studio.
Yeah, whoever's doing the show, yeah, the curator, whoever's doing the show.
You brought in some Prismacolor pencil pictures with you.
These are done in Prisma. These pictures here were done in Prisma.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. When you can always come up and take a closer look at it. Yeah, these are all done in Prisma. I like Prismacolor because Prismacolor is not the most expensive pencil out there. It's not the cheapest pencil out there. But Prismacolor is a professional grade pencil. A lot of professional color pencil artists that I know that have been doing this for decades, they'll use Prismacolor. And of course they'll use Prismacolor too with other colors, with other manufacturers like maybe Faber-Castell, because it's a little harder, or they may use Caran-d'Ache, which is a lot softer. So they'll learn how to combine both of them. And a lot of times what will happen is you may love the greens in Prismacolor, but there's not enough blues for you in Prismacolor. But Caran-d'Ache or Faber-Castell makes a beautiful blue that you use for your sky, so you'll end up using a blue out of a different manufacturer. But a lot of color pencil artists will mix them together.
And how do we bring our stuff to bring our stuff in dimension to life in our drawings? Because I do mine on Stonehenge paper.
Oh, you do? Okay. Stonehenge paper is probably close to the top of the line of papers. With Stonehenge paper and color pencil, because Stonehenge paper has a lot of tooth to it compared to this film, which has very little tooth to it. With Stonehenge paper, you have to learn how to add a lot of layers. The professional artists that I know, color pencil artists that are using Stonehenge, they can get up to 50 layers of color pencil onto that paper. For example, when it comes to drawing your black hair, they would never use black. They would use indigo blue. They may use a little bit of black. They use some reds, some blues. They use a lot of colors in there to create that black hair of yours. And it makes that black hair look a lot deeper and a lot richer, and it'll really pop off the page. Whereas when you're using color pencil right out of the box and you're drawing like your shirt, if I would just find that color and just draw your shirt that color right out of the box, it would look a little flat. But as color pencil artists learn that with the Stonehenge paper, they can layer color on top of color on top of color, up to 50 colors, to get that color green, and that green, that shirt will scream right off the paper. So that's what, when you have Stonehenge paper, you need to learn how to use the paper, because it takes a lot of pigment to fill up that paper. Whereas like a film or a crescent board that doesn't have much tooth, you'd only take 2 or 3 layers of color pencil, and that's all you can get on there, because after that you're just pulling color off of color. So Stonehenge paper is a great paper to use, but it takes a little, there's a learning curve to it, even for highly professional.
I want to show you what I'm talking about. I want to show you some of my favorite pictures that I'm talking about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not
Well,
right now.
afterwards we
but
could, yeah.
Let everybody finish and you can show
Yeah, I
them
can stick around.
afterwards, okay?
Yeah, anybody has any questions on color pencils or applying color pencil on their paper after this is over with? I'd be happy to answer your question.
You say you work on a film. Is that film mounted on something, or do you use a light box behind it?
I can use a light box behind it to do my tracing of my reference photo, but when I mount it for presentation or framing, I put framer's tape on the top of it and just glue it on a piece of foam core board. So this is foam core board here. It's a piece of foam. There's paper on the front and paper on the back. Very light, very archival, so it won't yellow. But what I will do is tape my film onto my foam core board, and then I'll mat it, and then I'll frame it.
How long is it gonna take?
To frame or to do the drawing?
Drawing.
Well, it kind of depends on the drawing itself. Like a drawing these sizes here, like this size here, would probably take a good 3 to 6 months, depending on how much detail. Especially with this one, took a long time because as I was working on the pattern on her skin, this is called Painted Muse. When I was working on the pattern on her skin, I didn't realize how I wanted to look. Is it going to be a tattoo? Is it going to look like it's painted on? Is it going to look like it's a shadow cast on her? So I played around with a few different ways until I decided that I wanted to look like it was inked on her or painted on her. So yeah, and this actually was a piece of veil that I bought at an antique shop. I scanned it in and then put it on top of a photo to see how I wanted to lay, and that's how I ended up getting all the different patterns.
Okay.
And the same thing with this. All I did was taking this eraser and pull on all this pigment to create this pattern.
What about Prismacolor markers? Do that?
Markers?
Yes. Do that apply the same thing to the same thing you're doing as color paper?
Well, the Prismacolor markers, you'll put it on a board, but I can't pull it off.
Okay.
Prismacolor markers are great if I want to do let's say a background. In this case here, I can do a background, or I can even do the pattern of her outfit in blocks, and then go back in with a color pencil and start working on all the detail.
Okay.
So use your color pencil marker as if it was a brush, and you're putting down all your broad strokes with the color pencil marker just to get some color down on there. And then once you have that all down there, then you can go back in with your color pencil and start adding in all the detail.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, you use I'm right about that picture. You use the technique of pulling away color.
Yes.
And then you went in with color pencil.
Yes, what I would do is I'd go back in and pull all this out, and then in her hair or her face, I would take a kneaded eraser and I'd start pulling out areas here to create her nose and her forehead and her eyes. If I want the widest areas of her eyes, I start pulling it out with this eraser. And then I can always go back in with the Prismacolor. This is a very thin Prismacolor. It's like the Prismacolor Premiere, except it's a thinner pencil. It's like the same kind of weight as your graphite pencil, except it's a color pencil. So when you sharpen, it gets really fine point to it. So I can go back in with this and start adding all the little detail that I may have pulled out too much of or wanted to add to.
So did you create this technique?
Yeah.
Wow.
I created it because, like I say, I was doing color and I just wasn't getting the emotion out of the color. And I thought, okay, when I was doing charcoal years ago in college, we used to have a technique where we take charcoal dust on a paper and then we pull it out with a kneaded eraser, and that's how we do it. And I thought, I love doing that. How can I adapt it to color pencil? So I thought, okay, I have a color pencil stick, but somehow I have to get it into a liquid form with the solvent that I would use. So I turned it into a solvent and came up with the background, and then from there just worked on the extraction method. And what's happening was when I teach this in workshops, the people that have taken my workshops who haven't gotten into an exhibition before or can't get into our CCSA or Carbon Society exhibitions and they just aren't good enough. One lady took my workshop, got into this show that we had here in August, actually won an award. Last year, I didn't get in the show, but somebody else, one of my students got in the show and actually won a big award. So a lot of it just kind of changed the way people look at their work.
Yeah, the book, Drawing on the Right Side, it also talks about a black background and lifting out white. Putting white in a black background. Picture. It's in the book.
A lot of
Drawing on
times,
the right side of the book.
a lot of times people, if you put a white piece of paper in front of them and have them draw something, it's not hard for them to do. But like even with my students, I will have them draw on gray. And they already have the midtones already taken care of for them, so they don't have to worry about the midtones, or drawing on black paper. Your darkest tones are already sit there in front of you, so you don't have to worry about that. All you have to worry about is your highlights and your midtones. In this case here, the same thing with this. I'm already starting out with my midtones, or my darker midtones already in place, and all I have to do is create the darkest areas and pull up the hottest highlights, and then start working all the other tones in between.
Would you mind if I looked at your eraser?
All right, no, actually, here, I tell you what. Yeah, those erasers you can get at Dick Lit, and there's a cartridge in there, so when that eraser runs out, you can buy cartridges that you can stick back in there. And they come in, that's a .5. There's also a thicker eraser too, but I like the thin eraser. It also comes in a rectangle shape also.
By you going to a store and buying these erasers, it seems to me that there's a technique, some other technique that uses that type of tool to work. So, wouldn't that be something already done?
Well, this eraser is actually used for erasing fine detail. If you're doing a black and white drawing, or it could be color drawing, and you have a line that you want to take out, but a regular eraser is just too heavy or too thick, this is why you use that. You would actually go back in and erase that line.
I see.
And also the nice thing about this is that I can take a razor and I can cut this into a finer point than this if I really want to get into, you know, the detail of the eye or the detail of the lip or the detail of the beard, the detail of a beard. Doing hair with this is so much fun. Like I went back in here and it's just all you really have to do is just draw. I start blocking out the hair first instead of drawing every strand. Like most people try to draw strands of hair, and it just comes out to be flat. I draw blocks of hair first, take out blocks of hair, and then once I take out a block of hair, then I go back in with those blocks and I start pulling out the smaller blocks away and start pulling out pieces of hair in the smaller blocks to create the hair. And then start to carve it. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And actually, if you've ever done a carving or a woodcut or a linoleum block print, or scratch board. This is sort of like scratch board. Yeah.
Has color pencil grown in popularity in the couple of years?
Huge. What has happened was, years ago when I first started color pencil, probably in the late 90s, color pencil artists were not accepted into galleries. They weren't accepted into shows. It was kind of like I thought it was like kiddie stuff. You know, it was almost like crayons. And what has happened in the past decade is the Color Pencil Society of America came out in the late 80s, and they've kind of proven to everybody that color pencil is a fine art medium. And now what's happening is color pencil artists can enter a show with painters, with sculptors, with watercolorists, and actually get accepted into that show or juried into that show and win the show, place the show, win awards in the show. So color pencil artists are now standing side by side with painters and in the same show and winning shows. So it's gotten huge, and it's gotten bigger because about a decade ago when we had the coloring book movement, where you'd walk into Dick Blick and they'd have a full aisle of nothing but coloring books. And a lot of people got into the coloring books, and then after a while they got, I want to do something different. And what I had done is I went on Facebook and found people that were doing the coloring books, and a friend of mine started a Facebook page and brought all those color pencil people that were working on coloring books into her Facebook page, and we started to get them to do color pencil art. So they went from doing the coloring books, and now they're doing color pencil art. So yeah, color pencil has gotten big, to the point where you walk into a Dick Blick, and you don't see those big, huge aisles with the coloring books anymore. Those big aisles with the coloring books have been replaced with more and more color pencils, bigger sets of color pencils, more variety of color pencils, new kinds of erasers, new kinds of pencil sharpeners. So that the areas that used to be with the coloring books are now being devoted to color pencil artists. And then also, Artists International magazine is now going to, every month, have a section of nothing but color pencil artists.
And who are the most well-known color pencil artists of this modern time, from the past all the way to the present? And has it reached its peak?
The people that were here in the show in August were the best color pencil artists in the world. In the past 3 years since I started this technique, I have my stock in color pencil, my importance in the color pencil has risen up to close to the top, because I'm doing something totally different. I'm bringing an element of color pencil that's never been done before, and bringing a lot more emotion into my pictures than most color pencil artists would. In this show here, there's a lot of color pencil, there's a lot of portraits that were in the show that were all in color, that didn't win awards. The piece that I had in the show won an award because a juror recognized that, yes, it's a black and white piece, and it's up against all these beautiful full color pencil drawings, but this piece resonates with the judge, it resonates with the juror. It had a lot more emotion invoked in that piece than the pieces that were all totally in color. So, yeah, besides my work, there's Tanya Gant, who had a piece in this show. John Samoko had a piece in this show. John Samoko's artwork is on, one of the artists here had the tin of the color pencil sticks. And that's John Samoko's work on the color pencil sticks, and he was actually here in that show too. So, I'm lucky now, about 2 years ago I couldn't say this, but I can say this now, that I'm probably one of the top 5, top 3 color pencil artists right now in the world.
Wow.
Is there some history in using color pencil?
Well, I think the history is Vera Cornell, who is actually the founder of the Color Pencil Society of America. She started this group because there's a lot of women that were stay-at-home moms. They might have had an art career before. They loved art in college. They had to stay home with kids. They couldn't really paint with kids around because a lot of the solvents and a lot of the mess and getting up and down with the kids all day, that they wanted another medium to work on. So they started working with in color pencil. And The Color Pencil Society of America was predominantly maybe 99% women for decades, and a lot more men got into it. So, and now there's, I don't know what the percentages have been in there now. There's a lot more men now. But it's a medium that's easy to pick up and put down. It's a medium that can travel very well with you. So yeah, I don't think it's peaked yet. I think it still has a lot further to go, and that's why the Color Pencil Society of America is here to push people like your Prismacolors to make sure that all your colors are light fast so they don't fade. So when you're working on your drawing and you sell your drawing to somebody, it's not going to fade in 10 years. And we're trying to make sure that your color pencil manufacturers come out with light, fast pencils so they don't fade. Same thing with paper. We go out and make sure that the paper that everybody's buying is archival paper that isn't yellow. So the stuff that these manufacturers are putting on the shelf at your Dick Blick or your Michaels is professional grade materials. So that we just keep pushing the manufacturers.
Have you ever thought about trying your color pencil with other mixed media?
I do. Actually, there's a show that we actually have every year. It's called Explore This, and it has to be 80% color, at least 80% color pencil in another medium. And I enter that show every year too. And I'm usually get like the third, fourth place in that show. But I actually combine color pencil with charcoal. Charcoal is really hard to work with on the film. You have to kind of take your time because there's not enough tooth to it. But with a little work, sometimes I kind of scratch the back up with sandpaper to get a little tooth to it, and I can add charcoal to that. Or ink works very well on film, very well on film.
Did you use graphite pencils for any of these drawings?
No, I try to stay away from graphite on the film because the graphite is very slick. And what you could do, you could do your drawing backwards on the back of your sheet in graphite, then flip it over and add your whatever color you want to add on the front of it. And then you can see through your drawing from the back. But graphite for me, when I put graphite on this film, it's very slick, and I try to add colored pencil on top of that, and the colored pencil has a hard time adhering to it, so I stay away from the graphite.
And how have ladies contributed to the art world so far? Not just in colored pencils, but in all areas.
Oh, ladies, I followed all the ladies. I tell you what, I have some ladies that were over here at the gallery across the street, the Judy Brothers, I think that's it.
Soul Brothers.
Yeah.
Soul Brothers.
They had a show up there, and there was like 3 or 4 women artists in there that I've been following for years, and some painters. They do some unbelievable work. I was just down at Zola Lieberman Gallery downtown at a show last weekend, and there's a woman there, Renee Schuler. She lives up in the Lake Shore, or the North Shore, and she does gorgeous paintings. They're representational paintings of women. But I tell you what, a lot of the women I follow, because I guess they have the sensitivity and the light touch that I'm looking for in my work, and also the subject matter is pretty much kind of what I'm looking for too. My work is not really, as a guy, people look at my work and think a woman has done it. I don't draw macho characters, I don't draw sports heroes. For some reason, I always try to draw beauty, and so a lot of my subjects are women. But I also show the beauty, the emotion, the frailty in my subject. So, yeah, there's the women artists out there they're better than men, I tell you. I follow just about half a dozen other women out there in the field, and they're not just color pencil artists, but they're also painters too.
Do you keep a sketchbook?
No. I'm very, 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 very guilty of that. I guess because I'm always drawing in my head, but what I will do is, in the past 3 or 4 months, I started a new process that I added into my process, which is creating a narrative, creating a story. So what I do now with my work is I come up with a story. I come up with a story, I write it, and then I go out and seek my model. And then I do sketches. I'll have like a half a dozen sketches depicting the story. I'll take my model, I'll take her into a studio, light the studio and everything, and then shoot the pictures based off of the narrative that I write. Unfortunately, I don't keep a sketchbook because I do a lot of work on the computer, working out details in problems. So I do a lot of that on the computer. So I usually the computer is my sketchbook.
I can see the technique of this process by light from the window. How you take away the darker colors and bring out the lighter colors.
Got the lighter tones.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm sitting under air conditioning. Yeah, and I can see how it's done because the reflection from the light from the street, it gives me a better idea of how to do it.
Yeah. The drawback that I have found on working on film, I've learned the biggest drawback for people when they work on film is there's just not enough tooth for people. And when I lay my pencil down on the paper, my strokes are very light. I'm barely touching the sheet. And I hold my pencil at the very back. If you want light touch on your drawings, if you feel like you're getting too heavy on your strokes, back up on your pencil. Just pull your fingers all the way back to the back of the pencil, and that's what I do. And I'm barely adding the strokes onto the paper. That was the biggest problem I had with the film. The second biggest problem I had with the film was it's very reflective. And when I'm finished with my drawing, I have to shoot it. And when I shoot it, I get a lot of reflections, and I'll shoot it outside. And I have to wait until it's a day that the sun's not really out, it's a dusky looking day, hazy looking day, the sun's not that bright, and then I'll shoot it outside. Because there's just too much reflection. And if I try to shoot it in my basement, in my studio, the lights that are yellow, they'll just cast a big yellow haze on the picture. It just soaks up the light. So yeah, I've got to learn a couple ways of working with this stuff.
Which artists have you looked up to for inspiration to get you where you at now?
There's one woman out of Michigan. Her name is Mary Borgen.
Mary Borgen.
And she is represented in a gallery downtown, Victor Alvarez's gallery on Superior Street. And she does she does charcoal on film. And she does them, they're 6 feet high by 50 inches wide. She does a full body. And I've always loved her work, and I've always followed her work because we work in the same medium. We're both working with portraits. She really captures her subject matter. And so she probably, of all the people that I follow, she was probably my number one person.
And who was your mentor?
When I was growing up, or my mentor now?
Mentor back then to get you started on your color pencil journey.
I would have to say that the painter Leroy Neiman.
Leroy Neiman.
Yeah. Leroy Neiman, as a kid, Leroy Neiman and Norman Rockwell were the reasons why I wanted to become an artist. And a lot of people laugh at Norman Rockwell because his stuff is so, so innocent looking. But I loved his work, and Leroy Neiman's work I loved because it was so loose, so painterly. With just a small amount of strokes, he could draw a box.
What do you think about Escher?
Escher?
Yeah.
Escher, yeah, he's a lot of detail, yeah.
Do you find your,
Sorry, we're gonna just let other people ask more questions, and then some people can, if they want anything.
Okay.
Leroy Neiman, how you spell his last name?
Oh, I'm sorry. You
do
done?
you find your artworks, you don't sort of unforgiving? I mean, is it hard to make a mistake, or?
No, actually, that's a good question, because with this technique, I have learned that I really can't mess up, because if I mess up, I can always add more pigment.
And if you want to use eraser, you fill it in, and you go with the color pencil, and back and forth, and back and forth.
Yeah. It's funny because when I learned how to draw when I was a little kid, I used to draw cartoons out of the newspaper. And when I would draw, erase. Draw a better line, erase. Draw a much better line, keep it. And that's how I drew it.
Have you heard of Gustav Klimt?
Sorry?
Gustav Klimt.
Yes.
Yeah, he does faces this way and faces
Yeah.
that way. Great stuff.
Have you ever? Are you a slave to the computer, or you try to use the same technique without the computer? I'm just curious.
Well, the only way I use a computer is I will bring my image that I shoot at a photo shoot, so I can view it on the computer. What I may have to do is there's a piece I'm working on now of a lady. She's on a cliff and she's overlooking the cliff, and the shot that I took of her in the studio, one of her arms was not showing up very well. So I had to take an arm off another photo that I did of almost the same position and add that to it. And then the dress was blowing, but it wasn't blowing out as far as I wanted. It wasn't as much, I didn't get much movement. So I ended up going into Photoshop and actually cutting and pasting and repainting the dress so it's out further. I just use the computer to work on my composition and work on my lighting. And then then I print out this size or whatever size I'm working on, a huge reference photo, as you probably work with a reference photo. And I want to, at that point in time, I want the best, cleanest, brightest, sharpest reference photo possible. So as I'm working on my work, I know exactly what I'm looking at. If I have a problem with the eye, that eye looks kind of blurry in that reference photo, I can still go back on my computer and blow that eye up on my computer and take a look at it. And sometimes I'll draw, and the computer's sitting right here, and I'll blow something up on the computer just because I'm having a hard time with an eye or with the detail of lips or something. So I'm not a slave to the computer, but the computer is a very important part of my process to get what you get.
I have a reason I mentioned it that way. I have a love-hate relationship with the computer, so.
You feel guilty.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, you feel a little guilty. Yeah.
Was when you was using the camera, was there a lot of trial and error as far as getting the right camera before you learned which one works best for you?
Well, my wife always said I was the worst picture taker possible. So I had to learn how to take good pictures. We have a Canon, and we have another that's just a point and shoot. But what I've had to learn was how to work with the camera, how to pose the subject matter, how to, just because what I'm looking at in the viewfinder is not necessarily what I'm going to get in the picture, because I've looked at the viewfinder and thought, oh, this looks great. And then I look on the computer when I download the pictures and like, where'd that come from? So I've had to learn, and the way you learn is you just keep doing it. And it really doesn't, you don't have to have a $15,000 camera like professional photographers have. Just a decent camera that will take a high-res picture. I mean, iPhones anymore now are taking fantastic pictures. You just need to go and take that picture and be able to download it somewhere and be able to print out a high-res photo, either on your own printer at home, or you can go to FedEx or UPS store, or there's online websites that you download your images to, and they will print out and send you a very clean, nice reference photo.
Yeah, because I missed the Polaroid instant camera.
Oh, you and my dad will.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up because